Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Expert, it is our last session dedicated to work culture with Joe Bertotto, Chief Culture Officer for Viso Financial. Today, our focus is the tough love of excellent managers, effective accountability. Joe, here's my first question. Tough love is a term we don't usually hear in business circles. Can you explain what you mean by it?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so tough love is the idea that, as managers, if we create a very caring environment, right, one where people feel valued, people are doing more of the things they're good at and enjoy, it shows people that we care about them, right? And so that's always part of it. And then, there are times when things happen and information doesn't get transferred or things don't get done or people don't meet goals. And so, with that, then comes some discussion around what happened, right? So I think that idea of tough love is how do we balance this idea of creating a caring environment and then holding people accountable when something goes wrong.
Yeah, I'll say holding people accountable, it's difficult. Is there a way to make the conversation more palatable?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it is a difficult conversation for everybody. And the more I think about this, I really don't think people want feedback as much as they want encouragement, right? I think people less want kind of constructive feedback and want more encouragement. I just feel like that's what people want, right? So, um, so kind of the idea then is it's thinking about, is this the right fit? Is what you're doing a good fit for you? So earlier we had talked about this idea of, molding a job to a person. And I think that comes into play here because if we are as leaders are trying to make sure we're putting people in positions to succeed. And I know you as a manager, Jamie, really look at that a lot, right? Always thinking about how do I put this person in a position to succeed. I think when we're doing that, we get less of this people not being able to do certain things, right? Or not following through or not hitting a target. And so many times, I think what really is occurring when people are not accomplishing something that they were expected to, I just don't think it's the right fit for them. And I think the conversation centers more on, is this the right fit? Is this the right thing for you to be doing? Because if it's not, let's figure out what are the right things for you to do. Now, having said that, there are all things in our jobs that we have to do, right? No one has a job that is 100%. I only get to do the things I'm good at and enjoy. That's very few people have that. And so it is kind of recognizing that sometimes people have to fight through things in their job. But the more we can mold the job, and then the more we start to have conversations when things don't get done, okay, is that not a right fit? Have I not put you in a good spot to succeed? And I think that is also preceded by what kind of environment am I creating as a leader, right? Because if I've created a really good environment where people enjoy coming to work every day, where people want to, do good work for the members, for their colleagues, for their manager, then people are putting forth the effort all the time. They're giving their discretionary effort. So then, if something's not getting done, typically, I think it's because maybe that's just not the right fit and I procrastinated too long on it, or, you know, I thought it was easier than it was going to be, that kind of thing starts to happen, or I just struggled with it, you know, that kind of thing. Um, so I think that's kind of part of it,
Okay. All
right?
right.
So I think the way to have that conversation is to really talk about, is this a good fit for you, right? I think fit is a key answer because the number one predictor of success in a job is fit, right? Is the fit the right fit for me? So, and if it's not, I'm going to struggle.
Yeah.
So if I have tasks in there that aren't the right fit, I think that's the issue, and that's the question then that
Okay.
makes it a little easier to have the conversation.
I've heard you say, here at the corporate, burnout doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from working too hard at things you don't like.
Yeah.
How does that play into the accountability?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is that sense of, you know, if you're doing the things you're good at and enjoy, you can go for long periods of time. When you're doing the things you don't like to do, that's harder, right? So I think the idea then is when I'm doing most of these things that I just don't, that are wearing me out and, you know, impacting my quality of life, my well-being, I think that goes back to the whole fit thing. So, how do I minimize as a leader those pieces of your job that you really dislike? Because, that's going to impact your ability to succeed, which is going to impact the team and the credit union, right? So I think a lot of it does kind of go back to that sense of, do we have people doing the right things that marry up the needs of the credit union to be successful and the needs of the individual to bring forth their greatest contributions, right? So, so I think that whole fit idea plays into accountability and plays into burnout too.
Okay. Well, and last week, we talked about befriending your employees.
Mhm.
How does that relate, or how does accountability relate to befriending your employees?
Yeah, yeah. Because last week we kind of talked about that whole idea of many times the reason people don't want to befriend their employees is because they have to have these conversations around accountability. And I kind of go back to, I think if you have really strong relationships with people, one, they're holding themselves accountable, and self-imposed accountability is far more effective than manager-led accountability, right? I know the effort I put forth. I know what I have to do to get a job done. So my personal pride's going to kick in. I mean, all those things take hold when people feel really good about their work environment. And again, I think it does go back to, if it's not working and I have a great relationship with you, that conversation is more about what happened. Is this not a good fit? It's a different conversation. And that's the idea to me of tough love. It's not about, this accusatory is probably too strong a word, but it's not this sense of, okay, why didn't that get done? Right. And I'm interrogating. It's more about, hey, the problem is it didn't get done. So let me come on the same side as you and look at the problem over there and say, why? What happened? Is this not the right fit? You know, why didn't it work out? What were the barriers? How do we remove those the next time? High performing teams, their main method of discipline is learning, right? So if you're high performing teams, always look at opportunities where things didn't go right to say, what can we learn from this? How do we prevent it the next time? So we're always getting smarter and better, right? So I think when you have those relationships, the conversation to me gets easier, especially when you're holding it in the way that we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I hearing you talk instantly, a situation comes up, and this is just me, but sometimes when I think somebody, fails at a task, or doesn't do well, and we're talking about accountability, the first thing I look at it is, okay, well, I'm just as accountable for the success of it as they are. Like, I'm just as responsible. So, like, an instant example pops up. Like, the first thing I said is, okay, I think we both can agree this did not go the way either of us wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
So, what can we do to make it better? Let's look at, our procedures. Let's look at our, how we're doing things. Do we need to make a tweak? Do we, let's reevaluate it. And then, that person typically will say, well, let me take a look at it and see and then they come to me with suggestions. And I'm always like, those are great suggestions. Let's try that, like, to make that part of the conversation.
Yeah, and that's what makes you a great manager. That's why your teams are so engaged, because it is that, like, it's the we part, right? It's not what did you do wrong? It's, okay, what did we do? I mean, what do we need to do better? How do we learn from it? Right? That's the conversation. And I would guess too, Jamie. I mean, knowing you and knowing your team, that's a never a contentious relationship. It's all or a conversation. It's always just, okay, how do we fix it? And let's come up with ideas, right, to make us better. That's the idea. And that's standard too. Like I think one of the things with accountability is always thinking about, do I as a manager have a high standard of performance? Right. And if I have that high standard and people on the team are aware of that, know it, and I live it every day, I set the bar for people's performance. And if I've got a really strong relationship with everybody on the team and they have strong relationships with each other, then people are holding themselves accountable all the time.
Yeah.
Right. No one is going to be harder on somebody than they are on themselves
Yeah.
if they really care. And if you've created an environment like you have, that's what happens. Right. So the whole tough love thing gets real easy because the love is around the care and the toughness is the high standard. Right. And then people are holding themselves accountable and you step in where you have to. But to your point, you step in as we, not you. And that language makes a difference to people.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a beautiful point you bring up.
Well, and you told us a long time ago, people don't come to work and go, what can I do wrong today? That's not what they're coming to work to do. That's not their goal.
Right.
So that always stays in my head too.
Yeah, people are trying to, work is an expression of your gifts, right? It's a way you can contribute. And I think people come to work if you've created the right environment, that's what people bring every day. Right. So no one, yeah, no one is trying to screw up. People want to do a good job. People have personal pride, right? It's just bringing that out. So
All right.
that's what
Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think this one really ties into that kind of the first two things that we talked about. How do I make sure people are in the right fit? How do I create great relationships? And then this one is, am I setting really high standards of performance for myself and the team for people to live up to? Right. And I think people will hold themselves accountable. And then when we have to step in, your example is a great one about we. So that's a great point. Thanks for doing it, Jamie.
Sure. Joe, thank you again. Really appreciate you being part of this three-part podcast. I appreciate your time as well as all of your insights. So thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Jamie.
Sure. And if you're a leader at your credit union who is looking to build upon your leadership skills and make your institution a place of true servant leadership, then Viso Financial's 2022 Leadership Workshop is the place for you. Join Viso Financial's Chief Culture Officer Joe Bertotto, as well as your peers for these workshops to learn more about leveraging employee strengths, embracing servant leadership, building an engaged workforce, and so much more. The workshop is highly interactive, so all attendees can put their leadership skills to the test. Find out more details on Viso Financial's website at www.vfccu.org. Again, thank you for joining me. Thanks for listening, and make it a great day.